Hi, I'm Alan. My normal co-host, Dennis Sharon, is taking some time off enjoying a sabbatical from work. His sabbatical is part of a program we've developed at our firm to give our leaders a chance to disconnect, refresh, and come back invigorated. Since Dennis is out, we're going to rotate with some guest interviewers. Today I'm joined by my fellow shareholder, Rachel Godwin. In this episode, we're talking to Devin Ford, and she's a successful local photographer and also the founder of Mobile's Focused Women's Conference. Today you'll get to hear about Devin's passion for telling stories through her work.
Welcome to Playing Above the Line. We're a podcast that takes a peek into the daily lives of community and business leaders. Each week, we uncover different views of the path to growth, leadership, and achieving success. I'm Dennis Sharon.
And I'm Alan Cave. Dennis and I are both shareholders at Hartman, Blackman & Kilgore. We're a full-service accounting and business consulting firm. As CPAs, we've had the unique opportunity to work with many different leaders and decided we wanted a way to share their incredible stories that we've learned along the way. Well, Rachel, we have another beautiful day in South Mobile County. How are you?
I am doing well, Alan. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. And today we have with us Devin Ford, and we are honored to have you, and thanks for joining us for a few minutes. So, Devin, start by telling us a little bit about who you are, your background, and what you're doing now.
Well, I was born and raised in Mobile, but lived in California for almost a decade and am a commercial photographer and founded a women's organization whose mission is to encourage, educate, and empower women. And I have 2 daughters and a very sweet husband.
Well, I'm sure that your husband appreciates the fact that you think he's sweet. That's good. So let's circle back. The California thing is interesting to me. So how does the South, because you're from Grand Bay, is that right?
From Grand Bay, yeah.
Okay. So how does a Grand Bay girl end up in California for a decade? What did that look like?
Well, I ended up there because I honestly wanted to get out of Alabama. I loved and I love Alabama, but I always loved reading when I was a little girl, loved to read books, loved the idea of traveling. And so when I decided to go to school, I went to school in California and ended up staying out there. And I love California. It's amazing. But I did miss the hospitality of Alabama. We do have the kindest, most friendly people in the world. That is true.
Well, I've been to L.A. twice, but it was short trips both times. But it was fun to visit, but I was glad to get back home too. So,
yeah, the first couple of weeks, I lived in Santa Barbara, and then I moved to L.A. And if I'd moved straight to L.A., I would not have made it because the traffic is terrifying. And I remember I had accidentally pulled into the wrong lane, and this man pulled up next to me in a motorcycle and called me words that I would never say, and I just cried. I was like,
"Oh no." Well, we took a taxi everywhere we went, or a shuttle, so I didn't have to deal with the driving. But yeah, I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So while in Santa Barbara, you received your Bachelor of Arts in photography.
Yes.
Right? So you're a formerly trained photographer. I mean, when did that love come about? How did you determine that you wanted to be a photographer for your vocation?
Well, my mom took a photography class when I was little and then was a photographer. And so I always dabbled in it. But I went to college 3 times before I finished, settled on my college and went to Brooks in Santa Barbara because I wanted to find a career that I could travel and a career that I felt that I could have an impact and change the world. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I felt like that was a way that I could tell stories and have a voice.
And I think photography is one of those things that a lot of people think, oh, I'll just buy a nice camera and now I'm a photographer. And yeah, you can take pictures, but there's a difference in somebody who just snaps pictures and someone who sees things in that shot that people don't see until they look at the end result. Right. So tell me a little bit about that. What inspires you the most doing your photography these days?
Actually, I've just now been making a switch from what I was doing to circling back to what I want to be doing, which is making an impact. And so I'm starting to create a lot of my own content on the Women's Conference website and telling stories of women and stories about people who are having impact. But obviously light is always a thing, composition. I really love photographing people. That's my favorite thing. And every single time I photograph a woman, the first thing they say is, "I'm not photogenic." And we are all photogenic. It's just about feeling comfortable. And we just see so many images of ourselves every day. They're really designed to make you feel ugly so that you buy whatever the thing is they're selling, the eye cream or the hairspray or whatever. Because if you just always feel hideous, you're going to fill your cabinets with things to make you feel beautiful.
Sure.
Well, in reading your bio and some information that you sent Carrie, the word story or stories appears numerous times. So why is the story so important to you? I mean, what resonates with you in telling someone's story?
Stories are like, there's a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but it's like, you can't hate a person whose story you know. And I feel like, especially now, oh my gosh, go turn on Facebook. And I've lived in the most left and the most right place in the world. And both places think that the other place is filled with idiots, and both places are wrong. I've met amazing, kind, intelligent, wonderful people in both places on every side of every issue. And I think once you start to dig deep and like find out why people believe what they believe, and like you come to an understanding and you find out people's stories, that it just makes us all more open-minded and accepting. And it doesn't mean you're going to walk away and agree, but it'll change the way that you treat people or the way that you react to things when you understand why people feel or do what they do.
I think that's great. I think it talks a lot about perceptions and how sometimes we just already have those built-in perceptions that are not correct. And so when we can see something visually or maybe hear that person's story, it does change how we think about it. So that's awesome.
Well, thank you.
So speaking of stories, tell us the story of the Focus Women's Group in a conference and how that came about and what that is and exactly what you're trying to accomplish there.
Well, I attended a conference that ours is based off of in West Hollywood. And I remember when I got the flyer, I was so nervous about going. I thought, because I didn't know anybody, but I thought, well, I don't know anybody, so I'll go to this thing, you know. So I'm still friends with the first lady that I met. And in fact, my daughter is named after a woman that I met at this conference.
Oh, wow.
And it had such an impact in my life. That's when I learned about community development and actually how important it is to get involved at your local level with politics. It's way more important than the presidential election, because no matter who the president is, they're never taking your call, but your city council person will. And when I came back to Mobile, I started Googling and I couldn't find anything like that. The only ones I found were faith-based, and that's great, but it serves a different purpose. And so I waited until I met people, and then I decided to start one because I knew I couldn't do it by myself, and I'd been gone for almost 15 years. And so there just wasn't going to be able to do it without help. And actually, I believe Stacy Wellborn was the first person who said that she would help. We were having lunch, and she said, well, I'm all in. And so, a lot of women pitched in and helped make it happen, and men too, actually.
Well, that's exciting. So you've got the conference coming up. What other activities do y'all have going on right now?
Well, right now we're hot and heavy into planning the conference and, getting people there, selling tickets. As always, it's great to put on a wonderful conference, but if nobody comes, then, what's the point? Just coordinating that, getting all the speakers lined up. One panel I'm really excited about this year is called In Unison, Working Together for a Stronger Tomorrow. And it's a panel of men and women, and it's moderated by Todd Greer. If you don't know him, you should. He's amazing. He used to be at the Exchange, and now he's at University of Mobile. But it's about how we need to work together to empower women, because so many times people associate empowering women with disempowering men, and that's not what it's about at all. And you can't empower women without a buy-in from men. It's just not possible. So we're really excited about that, and just kind of spreading the word about what we're trying to do. That's what we're working on.
How many years has this been going? Is this the first year, or is this has it gone on before, the conference?
This is our third year.
Third year, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and Elizabeth Smart is our keynote this year, and we're really excited about that.
Sure.
So obviously it's grown then from year 1 to year 3. What's your view, or what's your hope for it as you go on down the road 2, 3, and 4 years? What would you like to see this morph into or become?
I want thousands of women to travel to Mobile every year, and this be like the women's conference in the Southeast. We're nonpartisan, and I want it to remain that way. Every year we do have a workshop, and I don't care if there's just one woman there, but we're always going to have it running for office 101, because I want more women to run for office and to win those elections. But we really want to be a place for women to come and focus on empowering each other, building their squad, like building relationships is a key to anything in life. And so we're trying to create those spaces.
So thinking through that, obviously part of what you're working with there is helping women develop into leaders, talking about their stories of how they've gotten into the roles they're in and that kind of thing. What does leadership mean to you today, and how has that changed maybe over your lifetime?
Well, I think over my lifetime, as a little girl, a leader seemed like the person who just told me what to do, But as I've grown and have become a leader is the most important thing about a leader is empowering people to also be leaders. I think that is one of and empowering people to be the best at whatever it is that they want to be. A lot of times, I think some people had commented last year, because when I spoke in the morning, I talked about helpers and asking for help, and I talked about all the women who'd made it possible. And someone asked me, well, why didn't you make it more about you? And I'm like, well, because these women didn't make it about them. They made it about this thing, and they're the reason that it happened. They're the reason that I have this mic. So leadership, to me, that's what it is. So.
Absolutely.
What about mentors? Is there anyone in your life that has inspired you to develop the Focus Women's Conference? I mean, who can you point to that's been a mentor?
Mentorship is everything. And one of my biggest mentors, her name's Joan Hennahan. She was the president of the board of the West Hollywood Chamber, and I met her at the West Hollywood Women's Leadership Conference. She ended up appointing me to that board, and I ended up having to run to get the seat again. But the experience of being on a Chamber of Commerce board was so impactful. But the time that she spent talking to me about everything from boyfriends to my business to finance I had a car wreck, and she helped me, find the best doctors and came and walked my dog. And I had another mentor when I was in college. Her name's Jane Gottlieb. She's had shows all over the world. And the greatest gift that she gave me was time. I mean, she spent hundreds of hours that this lady spent talking to me about my life and sharing stories with me about her life. I ended up traveling to Europe by myself because she had done that and made me feel confident enough to do it about myself. And I feel like that was life-changing. Like, to travel by yourself is I think everyone should do it. I actually would I'd be okay with my husband leaving us and going and traveling to Europe by myself, because there's just something so empowering about doing that. But the time and somebody listening to you and sharing their stories, I think it's priceless.
That's the one thing in your bio that I had read. So you moved to California with no family. I mean, your family's in Alabama, and you're in California across the country. And then you traveled in Europe alone in your 20s. And so it says in there that those things, it taught you that you really don't need anyone to trust in yourself, right? So talk a little bit more about that, and how important is it for that self-awareness and to be able to rely on your instincts and on your own ability in accomplishing what you want to accomplish?
I think trusting your instincts is everything, and just feeling confident. Confidence is key. I spent most of my young adult life with no confidence, and I would be easily swayed by someone, insulting me or making me feel small. And now, good luck with that. I don't really let that kind of stuff affect me. And I do believe that those people, these great women who took the time and made me feel that I was great, and then gave me the confidence to make decisions on my own. And then the moving to California, I just went for it. And that also was a mentor, teacher, who was not even my teacher at the time, but she wandered in the dark room and said, "You're really good enough to go for this," and spent the time and said, "Well, if you want to move to California, you should move to California." And so I did. And none of my family thought that was a good idea. So without that lady, her name was Susan Myers, investing in me, I wouldn't have been as confident. But now, it also gives me the confidence to trust in people, because I trust my instincts about people. Like I had mentioned Stacey Wellborn before. I mean, I've never been in a fight, but I would get in a fight for Stacey. But she, I just, from the moment I met her, I was like, wow, this is one of my people. Like, I can rely on her, and I could. She's proven that again and again with the conference and life. So.
Well, let's talk about some of your hobbies outside of photography. And obviously the conference is not a hobby for you, but when you're not spending time in those areas, what are you up to? So
I'm kind of a nerd. I like to watch a lot of stuff. You will not be shocked, but about empowered women. Like, I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Xena warrior princess. There's like an old show with Jennifer Garner called Alias.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like any shows where women are kicking butt, I like to watch stuff like that. And I'm a sci-fi nerd, so I like to do that. I like to read. I actually read a lot of like junior fiction, like Harry Potter and things like that, because the stuff for older people, like sometimes if you're stressed, it's just too much drama. I'm like, just give me somebody with a magic wand and let me just zone out.
There you go. That's fun.
But politics, I follow a lot of political stuff too much sometimes. I wish I didn't get into that. And then community development. I like to volunteer. That's actually something that I find really fun, which is strange, I guess, but I love to volunteer and get involved in my community.
Okay.
Well, I know we were talking before the podcast that you have a daughter, and she's 4. And one of the things in your accomplishments that I thought was very cool is that you said that you went to a parent-teacher conference, and the teacher said that your daughter was the most kind and thoughtful kid that she thought that she'd ever met. I mean, how important is that to you to raise a child who has a good heart and who is kind and genuine? And then what is your hope for her as she grows up? And she's only 4 now, but as you said, pretty soon she'll be a teenager, then out and on her own, before you know it. So what is your hope for her as she grows up?
I want her to always be considerate about other people and think about how what she does affects the world. And I'm kind of a tree hugger even though I'll explain to her why we don't buy bottled water. Like we don't buy bottled water at house. I do keep it at my photography studio, but it's just, and things like that. Like what you do affects other people. What you say affects other people. And we're kind of lax about a lot of stuff at our house, but to be mean or snarky, we don't allow that. And there are shows that I let my kids watch that maybe other people wouldn't watch, but then there are a lot of like Disney shows or different things where there's snarkiness and that mean, kind of catty behavior, and we don't allow that because I always want her to have a kind heart and to support other people and to make sure that she's friends with people that don't look like her and don't think like her. And to I always say she's my little warrior, and I think she will be. She likes to work. I want her to be a really hard worker too. So that was a value that my parents really put in us was to be a hard worker, and I think that's important.
Obviously, you've done a lot of things, going to California and Europe, and then your career and all that. Looking back, what would you have told teenage Devin?
I would have told myself to believe in myself and also to get myself together faster than I did. I spent a lot of time goofing off, and I spent a lot of time worrying about what other people thought. Mm-hmm. And I would say stop worrying about what other people think and just go for it. Because if I hadn't have wasted so much time before I figured out what I wanted to do, oh my gosh, where would I already be now,
Sure.
You've monetized your passion, and we had a guest on several episodes ago who I asked the question, so you've got a passion for this, how you turn it into a business? And he said, well, you got to monetize it. I mean, you can't have a passion for something and then and say I'm going to do it for a living, but then you can't make any money and live off of it, right? So how have you kind of reconciled? Obviously, you've done that because you're passionate photography. You've got a photography business and that kind of thing. So how does that look for you? I mean, how do you navigate those waters? And is the business part kind of something that's just kind of a drain that you just got to do that you don't really look forward to, or how does that look in your daily business life?
If any business person in the world said there wasn't some stuff that they do that they don't want to do, we would all be lying, right?
Sure.
So there are definitely sometimes things that maybe I'm not as passionate about that I do because I do also like money. I'm passionate about, going on trips and things like that. But for Focus, I always tease people and I say, technically we're not a nonprofit, but so far we are because it takes a while to build something like that.
Sure.
But a lot of people will say, well, why haven't you made it a nonprofit if you care about this? And that's something that no one would ever say to a man. Like they would expect you to know that you need to make money, but they expect women to always give our time, give ourselves. And, I have 2 daughters and they're expensive and they like food and vacations and Disney World and I think it's okay. We have to take the stigma off of that. It's not okay to make money. Obviously, we want to make sure that people are doing the right things. And again, going back to considering, how are our actions affecting other people while we're doing that? But I think that there's nothing wrong with making money about something that you're passionate about. And if you can figure out a way to work full time on something that you love and make money doing it, that's amazing. So I hope that more people do that. I think that a lot of times we get so focused on making a lot of money that we get in this rat race and then we've wasted our whole life being miserable to have a bigger house or, more things. So
Sure.
Well, I do have to ask this question. We had Lucy Gafford on a couple of episodes ago, and she's the director of the Mobile Arts Council.
I adore Lucy.
She was a great interview. We had a good time with her. You know, I'm envious of creative people because I'm not one. And so I know that I could take a picture of someone and you could take a picture of someone and they would be absolutely just totally different. I mean, you could tell what I did and what you did. So what makes the perfect photography subject? I mean, what is it about someone that makes them just, you know, the perfect subject to photograph?
I don't think there really is a perfect subject. Like today, I went and at University of South Alabama is a new client of mine, and I just sit there and take pictures of headshots of people all day. And a lady came in and she was like, "Oh, I'm horrible. I'm never taking a good picture." And I said, "Listen, it's not your job. Like, that's my job to make you feel good." So I started being silly. Like, I make people like close their eyes and take deep breaths. I make them laugh. Like, I do this. Everybody makes fun of this laugh that I do, and I do it in my own pictures now. But like, to get people to relax, a relaxed, comfortable person is always photogenic. They always are. But if you feel comfortable, if you feel good, if the person makes you feel safe, then you're going to take a good picture. So that's kind of my job, is to make people feel comfortable and safe.
I knew there was something I was missing. I guess that was, I guess that's...
Make people laugh,
Yeah.
do a silly laugh, and when they laugh, the moment when they get done laughing, people always have a real smile, and it's always a beautiful smile.
I like it. All right, I'm going to remember that.
There you
Next
go.
time I photograph someone.
Well, you talked about liking to read. Is there a book that you're currently reading, or maybe one you have read that made a big impact on you that you'd like to share with the listeners today, or a podcast or something along that line?
Well, right now, I've been reading Super Soul Conversations with Oprah, and I'll tell you, like, we had been going through some like stressful stuff, and that book is amazing.
Okay.
I read You Are a Badass. I really liked that book. You're just like, yeah. And then I was actually surprised. I did like that Girl Wash Your face book that came out, and I bought it because everybody else did, but I was like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this, and I did really like that. And then I do like, I was just on Cheers to Business, and I love that podcast. I love Katie and Karen. There's a lot of good local content that's coming out. Emily Blavos, I just picked up a book of hers. She's a local author, and it's about tying culture, food and culture. And that's really, I have not started reading it yet, but I can't wait to.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's a lot of good stuff. Well, this has been fun, very insightful, and I loved hearing about Focus Women's Conference and what you have coming up there. So as we leave, I do have one more question I like to ask, just kind of an off the wall question every once in a while. So this is it. So if I could grant your one wish to photograph one person in history, either alive or dead, who would that be and why?
Harriet Tubman.
Okay.
That was quick. That's very good.
Well, I just saw the that movie preview for her, and I actually cried. I watched it 3 times. I cried all 3 times. Like, what a hero and a warrior. Yeah. Like that. Oh my God. Like, she saved herself, and then she didn't get up there and say, "I'm safe now." She came back and she saved others, and I think that she's probably one of the greatest Americans that's ever lived. I would love to photograph her.
Great way to end the podcast. Devin, thanks so much for joining us. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for
Devin.
having me.
If you listen to this podcast as it's published, Focus Women's Conference is at the end of this week on October 4th, 2019. Check the show notes for links to additional information and tickets.
Well, thanks for listening to our podcast today. To never miss an episode, subscribe to Playing Above the Line at iTunes and anywhere else you get your podcast. And be sure to leave us a rating. We'd love to know what you think about our show.
To contact us or to stay connected, follow us on social media at HBKCPAS on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.